Paddy the Baddy. People are wanting to call him Paddy the Fatty. I don't like it. I don't like it. First off, I think it's rude, but secondly, I don't think it's overly clever. Talking about a guy and what he weighs is strange. I've had plenty of friends. I've had plenty of interactions. I have plenty of social circles. I belong to plenty of group chats, text and tweets and all. We don't ask each other what you weigh. And then if one guy does weigh a lot, like, we don't all giggle and think that that's cool or weird or fun. We don't think anything of it. We don't have these discussions. I think that the talk on Paddy has got to go. Now, we've always talked about it from the athlete standpoint, which is Paddy. Which is, hey, how good is it for his weight to be a yo-yo? As you get older, is that good for longevity? But we've never thought about it from a matchmaking standpoint, and Dana White just weighed in on this. Dana said it's a problem for us. There are short notice opportunities and cards that he has been discussed for that we would throw him in. And we can't do it because he needs X amount of time just to make weight. Okay, well, that's an interesting point. I don't think any of it have consider it from that perspective, guys. When I was in college, Coach Chuck Kearney, and Chuck Kearney would call it a necessary evil, which is guys would have to make weight. They would weigh in, knowing they weren't going to be able to get a competition. Let me give you an example in case you don't follow wrestling. You have a dual meet at, let's say, 141 pounds. You're going to put one guy on the mat, but Chuck might weigh in 3. Now, those 3 know only one of us is getting out there. 2 of us are just going to have to beat the scale. He would call it a necessary evil. But it makes the other team guess. There's some gamesmanship. There's a flip of a coin. I can save you from that back and forth. You do see the importance that if you've got a roster of guys and you've got a roster of dates, it's important that those guys can make those dates. And everybody in wrestling or in MMA has first got to beat the scale. So I don't like the topic. I think Paddy is interesting enough. I think he's fun enough. I think the least interesting about him is to know how much pounds he weighs. I hate that, and I want to stop, and I want it to go away, but Dana has now brought in another part. And if you guys want to go back and tell me the stars of the sport, right? Star is something different. Being very good at something, that's different. Being a champion, being a top guy, being undefeated, these things are different. If you talk about the guys that are stars, it's already happened. You look back at their careers. Throw any one of them at me you want. Anyone at random, at some point in their career, I will show you a last-minute replacement that they filled in for. It's a commonality that all the greats have, but there's more to it. There's also nothing that will project you further faster than filling in on short notice as a replacement. I don't know why. I don't know the phenomenon behind that. But if you're ever sitting down and writing down what you're going to do, I'm going to comb my hair this way, and when I get to the press conference, I'm going to wear this, and this is going to be my tag. This is what I'm going to nickname myself. I'm going to put a tattoo on my shoulder. Like when you're coming down with it, and the smart fighters do actually do that, you need to put last-minute replacement somewhere on there. Truly. It's all, I tried to get in the UFC. I mean, I'll personalize this real fast, but not my stories don't have to be something that I personally did. I observed the sport, but I will share with you. I was so desperate to get into the UFC, and so was my family, and it looked like that opportunity wasn't going to happen for me. My mother had a plan, and my mother wasn't a wealthy woman, but she was willing to pay $50,000 to Joe Silva, who was the matchmaker at the time, to get me into the UFC. And the opponent that I would have had at that time was Andrei Arlovsky. The date was 2005. My mother was willing to bribe Joe Silva to give me an opportunity at heavyweight. I was far from that, but just to be in the UFC was so important to me and to my family. Now, I ended up getting the opportunity. My mother didn't have to bribe the matchmaker, but I got in because I was willing to fight somebody that nobody else was willing to fight on short notice. Michael Bisping is the champion of the world today, not because of the punches and kicks, not because of all of the great things he did, but because he filled in against Luke Rockhold on short notice. All of the big names, all of the ones that caught on and went far fast, have that. So what's it mean? How do you do that? If you're a manager and you're keeping control of your guys, you are going to have headshots, high resolution, on file at all times. so that when a short notice opportunity comes, you see that, you go straight to the matchmaker, you send the headshot so they can put it on the poster, you send his weight, you send his record, you've got his medicals done. That's how you do it. Now, 9.9 out of 10 guys are going to wait to get the phone call, then they are going to go see the doctor, then they are going to do the blood draws, then they're going to think about getting licensed through a commission, then they are going to get their headshots. Generally, it will go that way. But the few guys out there that are paying attention, that know what time it is, will have all of those things done. They will scan the internet all day, and the second there's a last-minute replacement, they will insert themselves, and those guys get picked up all the time. How do I get into UFC, right? It's the million-dollar question. Win a bunch of fights on the regional scene. Maybe you go through the Ultimate Fighter. That's a great vehicle. Maybe you get on Dana White Contender Series. All of those are great vehicles. All of those are really great guesses. Be ready to fight on short notice. There's your best. Absolute number one. You want to know how you get in? That's how you get in. Number one, without question, Pat Cummings was a barista. I tell you guys the Pat Cummings story all the time, but it's such an important one. It's such an important metaphor for how you're laying out your career. Pat Cummings was in shape at all times, trained twice a day, every day, had no contract, had no money, had nothing, didn't even have a car. He rode his bike to a coffee shop where he was the barista. Honest work. Good, solid job. Dana White could not get a hold of Pat Cummings, but he heard about this guy who was disciplined and who was ready and who could make weight on Friday, and today's Tuesday. Dana White called the coffee store and said, you have an employee named Pat. Pat was working the drive-thru. Pat took the phone and Pat told Dana White, hey, I have to go. I got to get back to work. Dana said, take your apron off and tell him you quit. Tell him I'm in the UFC. Put the phone down. Pat did that. Rode his bike home, but everything was ready. He was a 205-pounder. He was getting ready to be the world champion. This was his goal. This was his dream. How do you have that goal and how do you have that dream with any level of sincerity if you can't even make the weight? You don't get to have both. Pat made the weight, walked straight into a co-main event spot. In addition to everything else, he got a $50,000 bonus. Those stories are a dime a dozen. However, my approach is more often true than yours. How do you get into the UFC has always been a million-dollar question. How do I get into Bellator? And your answers will always be the same of join a gym, start to get some amateur, start to build your social media. So the guys that are telling you that aren't wrong. They're right. They're correct. The Ultimate Fighter is a tremendous vehicle. That you're getting accurate information. Dana White Contender Series, that's a great marketing vehicle to get into the UFC. They're right. They're all right. I just have one more trick. I have one more way, and it's better and it's more secured, which is to be ready at all times. Be in shape, be willing to take on anybody, and have the ability to make weight on any given Friday. If you do that, I will get you into the UFC. And when Paddy, who's already signed, and Dana says we got a hard time, I don't think that we should give Paddy a hard time here. Paddy perhaps has not thought about that. That is now information that he has. He's a young man. He's a kid. In all fairness, he probably never knew that he was missing opportunities. He probably thought, look, the way that it works, my manager calls me and I always have 12 weeks. I always make weight. I've never missed. I'm doing everything right. He didn't possibly know until Dana's come out and spoke about this, said, hey, we'd like to put you in a little bit more often in some big spots. We just have to know that you're ready. And as of right now, we know that you're not. Well, nobody can be held liable for something they did if they didn't have the information. Now Paddy has it. Let's give him a break. Now he's got the information. Let's see what he does with it.